There's a kind of love that doesn't unfold all at once, a slow-burning, quiet rhythm that doesn't belong to romance novels or public declarations, but to something gentler, stranger, and maybe more lasting. Ours lived in a single day, once a year, in a little cafe on a quiet street where the seasons passed, but the table near the back window remained the same. The first time we met, it wasn't supposed to be anything. I had just missed a train, the kind of irritating inconvenience that throws off your schedule but not your life. The rain was light but persistent, and my coat, fashionable but foolish, clung to my skin. I ducked into the cafe more for shelter than caffeine. The place was warm, small, and quietly humming with the soft murmur of conversations and spoons against porcelain. I didn't even notice him at first. The man was seated alone at a two-top by the window. A book lay open beside a half-drunk cup of black coffee, and across from him sat another untouched mug, steam curling faintly from its surface. He looked up just as I scanned the room for an empty seat. Our eyes met, briefly, not sharply, not like a spark, but like a brush of wind against skin, barely there, and somehow already meaningful. He gestured toward the chair across from him. I hesitated, then sat. He didn't ask my name. Didn't ask what I was reading, or where I was going. Instead, he said, "You look like someone who orders coffee but doesn't always drink it." I smiled, startled by how accurate he was. We talked. For hours, it seemed. Or maybe it was only one. Time moved differently at that table, slower and softer. We spoke about the small things that say more than they seem to, our favorite words, the most honest book we'd ever read, the music that made us feel like we were 17 again. He told me about the scent of the street he'd grown up on, how he still remembered the way the bakery 2 blocks down used to smell at 6 a.m. I told him I collected moments instead of photos, little memories stored like shells in a box, never shared, just held. And when the cafe began to dim the lights, when the chairs started to shift against the floors and the barista began cleaning the machine with a kind of closing time rhythm, he reached into his coat pocket and handed me a paper napkin. On it, in handwriting both precise and unfinished, was a single sentence. Same day, next year. Same table. If you want. I didn't even realize until later that he'd never told me his name. I returned. Of course I did. I told myself it was curiosity. Novelty. A story to tell. But the truth was, something about that first meeting had embedded itself into me like a song with no melody, silent but impossible to forget. He was there. Same time. Same seat. 2 cups again. This time, we asked fewer questions. There was a comfort in skipping the surface. We talked about things most people save for late-night confessions, what scared us, what we regretted, what we hadn't yet told anyone. He told me he once spent 3 months in a city where he didn't speak the language, just to see if he could fall in love with being lost. I told him I sometimes stood in bookstores pretending to wait for someone, just to see if anyone would come. It became a ritual. One day a year. October 17th. Always at the same cafe, at the table tucked near the window with a crack in its left corner and legs that wobbled slightly if you leaned too far left. No phone numbers. No last names. No digital footprints. Just us, returning to each other like a secret the world didn't know it was keeping. We changed in quiet ways. He cut his hair once, let it grow the next year. I wore my mother's ring 1 year, then left it at home the next. One time I arrived with tears still drying beneath my sunglasses, and he didn't ask what happened. He just pushed one of the coffee cups toward me and said, "You don't have to talk until you're ready." It was the only place in my life where I didn't have to explain myself. And maybe that's why I fell for him, slowly, then entirely, and all at once. Not in the way of fireworks, but in the way dusk settles over water, so gently you don't even notice until everything's been transformed. I never said it out loud. Neither did he. We didn't need to. Until the 6th year. I arrived early. I ordered our coffees. I wore the coat he once said made me look like a character from a black and white film. I waited. And waited. He didn't come. For the first time, I was the only one at the table. The minutes crawled. The cafe filled and emptied. The light shifted on the floor like it always did around 4 p.m. And still, no doorbell chime. No familiar figure with a book and 2 cups. At closing, the barista, a new one, asked gently if I wanted the other coffee to go. I said no. I left it there, untouched. Like a question I was too afraid to ask. For weeks after that October, I told myself stories. Small ones, tender lies wrapped in just enough possibility to sound like truth. That he'd missed a flight. That he was ill but recovering. That something urgent had pulled him away at the last moment and he simply hadn't been able to reach me, though there was no number to call, no name to look up, no thread to follow. I walked the street past the cafe again and again in the weeks that followed. I even sat inside once or twice, not at our table, but near enough to see it. It remained empty each time, as if the room itself remembered and chose to leave the space untouched. Time did what it always does. It moved. And I moved with it. Not forward exactly, but around, through work, through days that asked for attention, through nights filled with half-sleep and quiet ache. His absence didn't ache like heartbreak. It ached like an echo. A sound that used to be part of the rhythm of my year, now missing, and everything else slightly offbeat. A year passed. I didn't go. Another. I stayed away. But the cafe lived inside me. That window, that table, the uneven legs, the way the light warmed the wood in the late afternoon, I carried it with me like a hidden room in my mind. A place I could return to, even when I was nowhere near it. And then, in the 3rd year of silence, on a Sunday in late September, I found myself standing outside a small gallery near the river. I hadn't planned to go inside, I'd been walking without purpose, one of those restless afternoons when you feel like something is moving beneath your skin and you don't know what to do with your hands. But I stepped in. The place was almost empty. Cool white walls, a faint smell of paint and varnish, the hush of a room that holds its breath. And there he was. Not in person. In paint. The canvas hung near the back wall. Large. Beautiful. Unmistakable. It was me. Sitting at the cafe table. A coffee cup in hand. Coat folded on the chair beside me. My hair caught in that moment just before falling across my face. My gaze, not at the viewer, but out the window. Lost. Waiting. The title of the piece. October 17th, Year 6. I don't remember breathing. I don't remember walking toward it. But I remember the feeling, that exact rush of recognition so intimate it felt like being touched. And beside the painting, a plaque. A name. His. For the first time, I knew it. I asked the gallery owner where he was. She said he'd moved abroad last year. That he left behind a small collection, told them to do with it what they wished. That he had asked for no contact to be passed along, no email, no address. Only this, the request that if someone ever asked about that particular painting, they'd be told one thing. She'll know what it means. And I did. He had come that 6th year. Or perhaps after. Sat alone at the table. Waited. And painted. Not a version of me from memory, but me as I would have been, had I arrived. Not the way I looked, the way he imagined I would have felt. Present and not present. Real and not real. The in-between space we'd lived in for all those years. Captured, finally, on canvas. It was the most intimate thing anyone had ever given me. And he wasn't even there. I left the gallery in silence. I didn't ask for a print. I didn't try to write to him. I didn't chase. There was nothing to chase. He had given me the ending. In the only way we ever gave each other anything, not directly, but with meaning. Now, every year on October 17th, I return to that cafe. I sit at our table, if it's open. I order 2 coffees. I drink one slowly. I leave the other untouched. No one joins me. No one has to. And though he never came back in person, in a way, he never left. Because some love stories don't live in years or titles or promises. They live in moments repeated until they become sacred. They live in the space between 2 chairs and one shared silence. And if you're lucky, they live long after the last goodbye.